chose not to go to battle. He let somebody else go off and do his fighting. That afternoon, while they were off at war, he was taking a nap. One afternoon, he woke up from his nap and he went out to a balcony. As he stood over the balcony, there was a woman named Bathsheba, and she was married to somebody else. She was taking some kind of a shower. He happened to see her. This is a true story. When he saw her, he liked what he saw, and so he told one of his servants. He said, "Who is that woman?" They said, "That's Bathsheba. She's married to a guy by the name of Uriah." Uriah, her husband, was off at battle fighting for David. So David said, "You know what? I kind of like her. I want to go to bed with her." This is true. Now look at me. Look at me. I'm not saying, hey, I didn't say anything that was funny. I didn't say anything that would cause alarm. I said what happens in the world today. He says, "I want to go to bed with her." Wrong choice. Bathsheba shows up. They go to bed. To our knowledge, they went to bed one time together. Wrong move. David got lazy. David began to lie. He lusted after another man's wife. And here's what happened. Uriah comes back. That's Bathsheba's husband. He comes back from the war. He says, "Hey, David, I want to tell you, man, we've been fighting. It's looking good." And then David said this. "Hey, dude, you know what? You've been away from your wife for a while." Oh, I didn't tell you this part. About 3 or 4 weeks later, it had to be that. Bathsheba finds out that she's pregnant. And so she sends word to David to say, "Hey, I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm going to have a baby." Now watch this. Uriah comes home. That's Bathsheba's husband. And David says, "You know what? You've been fighting with all my men. I tell you what, you deserve to go home tonight before you go back to battle. Would you go sleep with your wife, live, just kind of hang with your wife?" And he's thinking, man, they're going to get together. They're going to do their deal. They won't, and they'll never know any difference. But that didn't happen. The next morning, David wakes up, and when he opens up his front door to go out, there lays Uriah. He's at the outside, sleeping at the front door of David's house. David said, "Dude, what are you doing? Man, you could have went and been with your wife tonight." He was hoping he would have. But look at me. Uriah made an incredible choice, and we don't know a lot about him. He said to David, "Do you see all my men? They're over there asleep in tents. They didn't get to go home. How can I do that?" So David does what some of your friends are going to try to get you to do one day. David gets Uriah drunk. And he's thinking, now that I got him drunk, he'll go home, he'll kind of pass out, sleep with his wife, and it'll all be good. But instead of that, he passed out. Look at him. And he passed out. And the next day, David's just mad because he can't get Uriah to go home and be with his wife. So they're getting ready to go to war. And David writes a little note. And he writes it to one of his commanders. And here's what the note says. David didn't see it. Uriah didn't see it. He says, "I want you to put Bathsheba's husband on the front line. Make sure he's killed." So he writes that note and he seals it. Dig on this. And he gives a letter to Uriah. He didn't even know what's in the letter. And he gives it to the commander when they're getting ready to leave. And the commander reads it to himself. And when they get to the battlefield, they put Uriah on the front line and he's murdered. Look at me, he's killed. They find out, David hears, he's pretty excited about it. Bathsheba becomes now one of David's wives. Now watch this. Look at me. Back in the Bible, there's all kinds of different stuff. Back in the Bible, but here's the deal. She becomes his wife. The baby that they conceived together is born, but here's the sad part. About 7 or so days after the baby was born, the baby died. Look at me. It all started with one choice. Like some of you right now still not listening. It all started with one choice. Look at me. He got lazy. Instead of going and fighting, he got lazy. All of a sudden, he's looking at another man's wife. All of a sudden, he's lusting. The next thing you know, he's laying in bed with her. The next thing we know, she's pregnant. The next thing we know, getting her husband drunk, sends him off, he gets killed. The next thing we know, they get married and the baby ends up dead. But let me tell you what David did do. He was a man after God's own heart. The Bible says this in Psalms, that he repented. In other words, he said, "God, I've sinned against you. Man, I've messed up. Would you forgive me?" And God did. If I say the name Michael Vick, if you know that name, say I do. Everybody look at me. I only ask you to speak once. Michael Vick, can I tell you this, is an incredible football player. Michael Vick played at Virginia Tech. Look at me. I'm not asking anybody to talk. Michael Vick signed a contract with the Atlanta Falcons. And let me tell you what for $1.8 million, just a signing contract. Listen.